Good. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call to order the public hearing number 1. This public hearing is to accept unanticipated funds resulting from the reimbursement of operational expenses for the town of Bartlett Jackson Transfer Station in the amount of $15,000 from the town of Bartlett. This is money that's the first installment of approximately $39,000 to reimburse the town for operating expenses from March 1st, 2011 through August 29th, 2012. This was what Bartlett had available to spend at this point, and they'll have the balance coming throughout 2013, so we'll see full reimbursement for that. Technically, we have to have a public hearing in order to accept the funds, so that's what this public hearing is for. Does anyone have any questions about this money? Gino?
Just a quick, how did the town determine how much they owed us, and how far back did the town go to realize any unanticipated expenditures that they would have owed us in years past? Like 2 or 3 years ago, when we started this search for the funds with that. How did you determine if it was 15 or 30 or 40 or whatever?
Well, the amount of money was determined based on joint operating expenses for all employees, basically, on a 75 to 25% split, 75% being Bartlett's share, 25% being Jackson's share. And this amount was started from March 1st, 2011, running through August 29th, 2012. And from August 29th to present, all expenses are covered 75-25 as well. And we'll be owing Bartlett money now from moving forward from August 29th. Currently there's a balance of $25,000 that Bartlett still owes us, but we at this point owe Bartlett approximately probably $20,000. So the balance is pretty close there. So none of the expenses were looked at prior to March 1st, 2011.
Well, when did he originally request to the court for, was it declaratory judgment?
The declaratory judgment did not ask for any look back in expenses to be recovered.
So then I guess the question, not the pressure on it, but how did you determine then when the start date should be for the money they owed us?
That was based upon when we came to a settlement on the new contract. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and we'll open public hearing number 2, which is to discuss the 2013 municipal budget hearing.
If you don't have a budget, there are more up here at the front on the table.
Sorry, Jamie, it's going to be a little while.
Sick again? Still? Always.
What I'd like to do to run through the budget hearing this year is kind of go through by warrant articles. And the first warrant article that will appear for town meeting will be Article 5. And haven't heard back from DRR yet exactly how this warrant article should be worded and exactly to its placement. But basically what this warrant article is attempting to do is to spend the remaining balance of the bond that we took out for the public safety building. There's about $15,000, or there is $15,577.71 left over from the bond for that building. And in order to use that money, we need to have it on the warrant for town meeting, and that's why we're seeing it there. It can only be used to pay down the principal of the bond for the fiscal year in which there's still funds available. So it's a gross appropriation bill. The $40,000 that you see in it is to appropriate for the principal payment. The total payment for the 2013 budget year is going to be $68,700. 40 of that is the principal payment. And the $15,000 you see there again is from what's left over from the bond, and will take the legislative vote in order to utilize those funds. The other $9,774.60 that you see there is money that we have left over in the capital reserve, the expendable trust fund, and the other capital reserve fund that we had for the public facility, safety facility and salt shed. You'll see articles at the end of the warrant that closes out those capital reserve funds. The $9,774.60 is the equivalent of the balance remaining in those funds. So in order to utilize those funds for 2013, we will withdraw them from the unreserved fund balance. And at the end of 2013, the closing out those other reserve funds will replenish the unreserved fund balance in the same. So that's why you see that written that way. And any questions specifically on that part of it? Gino?
I hate to be the only one asking questions, but is that something, the numbers on here, Article 5, was that, were those numbers gathered by Diane? Were these made up by Diane? I'd just like to know, because I'll have some confidence in it.
These numbers, Gino, are the numbers that are available through the town budget. So,
Yeah, but what we owe and how much and all that, where did you get that information? Did you do that yourself? Because these are going to be looked at by the state. I'm just curious, who did these numbers?
all of the warrant articles that you see in the town budget were prepared by me.
Okay, that was just a question.
The budget numbers that we see are numbers that are worked on by the office staff, by our accountant, by DRA, by our town council, by selectmen, by different department heads. I mean, it's a pretty long and complex process that we go through to put our budgets together. They're not put together by one person or one group or any particular individual. The way the town operates is, we all have input into what we do and how we do it.
I understand. You've already given me the answer I want to know. That's okay. I don't want to belabor it. Fine. Good answer.
Article 6 is to raise and appropriate money for the operating budget of the town. That's the bulk of our budget. And to go through Article 6, I would like to go through the town of Jackson proposed 2012 budget. What? 2013, I'm sorry. Thank you. What it says on the top of my page there. I've made that mistake 3 other times today. And most of what you'll see in the operating budget is comprised up through to page 4 of the pages we have here. To go through this, I'd like to go through, we can go through line by line. I would say that as we go through this, I'll go through pretty quickly. If you do have any specific questions about a particular line item, please speak up and address the board, and we'll try to answer your questions. First up, you'll see elected officer salaries in the amount of $19,700. Employer FICA Medicaid expenses, $1,650. Selectmen expenses, $900. Treasurer's expenses, $500. Town clerk office wages, $31,300. Last year, we had a separate warrant article for the town clerk's wages. That was a necessity to satisfy legal requirements. This year, it's okay to go into the operating budget, and that's why you'll see that number change. So last year was a separate warrant article. This year, it's in this budget, so that's why it went up from the $10,900. It's compromising 2 salaries now, where it was only just 1 before. But the actual numbers overall have not gone up on that. Employer FICA and Medicaid expenses, $2,400. Town clerk, tax collector expenses, $12,440. Collection fees to the state is a separate budget item now. It had been comprised in the other number, but now it's separate, so that's $2,300. It's a new item in the budget. Elections and registration expenses, $750. It's down a little bit from last year because we don't have as many elections this year. Office wages are at $80,115. We looked at a 4% across the board increase in wages this year. So throughout all the departments, you'll see that same 4% increase. Town office wages, FICA, and Medicaid expenses, $6,500. Town office health insurance, $50,950. Town office retirement pension, $2,000. Utilities, $6,200. Supplies, $2,500. Postage, $1,000. Advertisement, $500. Association dues, $3,000.
Accounting expenses.
I'm sorry, accounting expenses, $3,000, thank you. Association dues, $4,200. Computer technology and support, $8,600. Registry recordings, $100. Minute recording, $5,500. Equipment repairs and purchases, $1,500. Training expenses, $800. Payroll processing fee, $3,000. Town report printing, $1,600. Bank fees, $100. Property appraisal, $38,000. That is the money we pay to our assessors that assess the town property values. Legal expenses, $20,000. Jackson Planning Board, $6,900. Board of Adjustment, $1,500. Maintenance of town buildings, $37,500. I would say on this item in the budget, it is down from the $56,800 that we appropriated last year. Historically, that budget item has been around $20,000. Last year it had gone up $20,000 to purchase the tractor for the town. Although that expense is gone from the budget this year, there are a fair number of other items that are in this maintenance of town buildings that wasn't there before. The town properties that were responsible, that highway crew is responsible for maintaining, has increased. And so that's a reflection mostly of those expenses. Jay, did you have anything you wanted to add to that at this point in time? Insurance general is $49,000. Intergovernment diesel fuel is $20,000. That is a number a gross appropriation for the school. That number is reimbursed by the school budget. Health insurance, $29,970. Building inspections, $15,000. Last year we budgeted $15,000 and only spent, the $7,406.20. That number is really an unknown. As it relates to the ordinance we're being asked to pass this year, we don't anticipate that that's going to really increase our building inspections expense line item. And this is mostly a gross appropriation. The money that is collected in fees for building permits offsets most of the money that we use for building inspections, and actually at this point in time is offsetting all the money that we use for building inspections. Septic system review, $2,000. Debt service, $1,000. That number's gone up to $1,000. I'll probably be explaining most of this later on in the hearing, but if the town votes to utilize the unreserved fund balance as the Board of Selectmen is recommending, we probably will incur some expenses for tax anticipation notes in 2013, so that's why that number is increased.
And we go back to the 3 or 4 lines, there's the health insurance others, which we expended nothing this year.
That's,
I'm not sure I understand what that is.
that's a gross appropriation, Frank. What it's for is former employees or former selectmen are able to purchase health insurance through the town. And if that option is exercised by a former selectman, then we need money in the budget in order to, it's a gross appropriation to pay for it. That money is completely offset by whoever would purchase the health insurance. So for instance, if it's like COBRA, but for selectmen who wish to utilize it. So last year it was a gross appropriation. No one opted to use it. Therefore, you won't see any expense from that. But if a former selectman were to utilize it, then we'd need a gross appropriation to cover it. It's exactly like COBRA, but it doesn't.
Different.
Thank you.
Moving on to the cemetery. Cemetery checking account. That's the balance of $1,613.75. Cemetery maintenance, $9,250. Debt numbers increased a little bit, mostly because the way the cemetery is going to be spending money is changing a little bit, so we had to adjust the budget for that expenditure. Police department wages, $144,560. Police department Medicaid expenses, $2,490. Health insurance, $85,420. New Hampshire pension, $35,750. Gas and oil for the police department, $12,000. Last year we had budgeted $11,000. We overspent that line item in the budget a little bit, so thought it wise to increase that a little bit this year. Vehicles, parts, and repairs, $3,500. Supplies, $4,000. Communications and technologies, $5,538. Special equipment, $3,500. Miscellaneous police department, $500. Special detail, $5,000. Any questions regarding the police department? Bartlett Jackson Ambulance Service. Oh, I'm sorry.
How many police do we have?
We have 3 full-time police officers.
And isn't there 4 for a part-timer?
Currently, we have 2 part-time police
So
officers.
1 full-time, which was Carl, and then 2 part-time?
We have 3 full-time.
3 full-time.
3 full-time police officers, and then there's 2. Currently, we have 2 part-time officers. Well, we don't really utilize the part-time police officers for. They're not used on a regular basis by any means at all. So that we have full-time, we have 3 full-time officers that work, that cover 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are 2 other part-time employees that we have. currently they're not utilized very often at all. You know, certainly not on a weekly basis, rarely even on a monthly basis are they there.
One of those part-time officers is kind of transitioning out, not really available to provide coverage with his full-time job. So we've recently transitioned in with another part-time officer to fill that part-time officer position. I can't tell you how long we've had a part-time officer and 3 full-time. It's been a while.
Bartlett Jackson Ambulance Service, $6,400. This item used to be budgeted at $5,000. Last year, in order to meet payroll expenses, the Bartlett Jackson Ambulance Service needed to ask for additional money from the towns of Bartlett and Jackson. We'll be getting reimbursed for the money that we overspent in there. The Bartlett Jackson Ambulance Service is really doing a great job of containing their costs, and they, for the most part, receive enough revenue to really cover all of their expenses. They do get pinched certain times of the year. They're finding it more and more difficult to recover funds from Medicaid, and that's why they have some payroll shortages sometimes, and that's why there's a little bit of an increase this year. Bartlett's increasing its share, and Jackson's also increasing its share. John, do you know what the split is on that?
60-40.
60-40. The cost sharing on that is 60% Bartlett, 40% Town and Jackson. Any questions there? Moving on to the fire department. First line item there, fire department wages are up from $50,000 to $60,000. Jay, if you want to comment at all, you're welcome to. That increase really, do you want to speak, Jay, or do you want me to speak to that? Or if you look at the compare wages, throughout the state and somewhat more locally as well, with the exception of the town of Bartlett, perhaps. The wages that we pay our fire department from top to bottom are significantly lower than throughout the state. This year we're increasing the overall budget item to try to compensate for some of that differences. We're not looking to certainly be even on average with the rest of the state, but it'd be nice to at least get closer a little bit to that number. One thing I can say for the Bartlett Jackson Ambulance and our fire department is that I'm hearing more and more really great news about our first responders and our fire department, the professionalism that they exhibit, and their dedication and hard work that they do, not only for this town but throughout the valley, is really quite evident by the response that we hear from people outside our town. It's nice to hear.
The biggest increase this year was we had 4 people take, 4 of them took 200 hour. There was a combination last year and this year of fire 1 and fire 2. 4 people did fire 1, which is 200 hours apiece, and then 2 of the people went right into a fire 2 class, which is another 200 hours each. So there was a huge amount of money this year in training. Some usually have a lot of training invested, and some usually don't have much at all on the big classes. That's the biggest reason for the increase this year.
Where does that show up? Does that show up under wages or?
Yes, all the wages under the fire department is for
training.
25 of us for all calls plus training.
There's a new training line item down there towards the end.
Which is for classes only.
That's right. And then you had also noted that you had a number of calls over the last year that had lasted a lot longer.
Yeah, we've had some calls seem to last long. I mean, we tried to put together reasons for calls going down, but hours going up, and there's just so many different factors that contribute to it. We had a lot of forest fire calls that were long calls, mutual aid calls, long calls. It's just so many different factors that make it hard to pinpoint exactly.
Fire code inspector wages at $17,000. This is the wages paid to Robert Goodrow for the most part, or entirely, I would say. One thing that certainly Jay's noticed over the recent years is the complications in the paperwork that come along with running a fire department. Goody's contribution to that really is invaluable, and we get a really great service from what he provides to the town. Fire department FICA Medicaid expenses, $6,050. Gas and oil for the fire department, $3,000. Operating expenses for the fire department, $17,000. Special equipment, fire department, $22,000. Testing equipment for the fire department, $5,300. Utilities, $12,000. You'll see a new line item for training in the fire department budget for $3,000. That was removed out of the $17,000 number that you see on the prior page. For the operating expenses, so we did remove that just so we had a little bit more clarity on how that budget's utilized. Hydrant service is $6,300, and John and Bob, just so you know, that number increased from what we looked at last meeting, and the reason why that's up, we had in the budget for 27 fire hydrants, and there's actually 31 fire hydrants that we have. 32. So that's to compensate for the difference of the number that we actually had. That had been a request from the water precinct, so that's why that number's up a little bit. Emergency management, 5,000.
Just a question there. How does, to what extent does the fire department get involved with the fire ponds?
It's a good question, and
We flush them. We flush them every year, the dry hydrants, the pipes, dry hydrants. We flush those. And the only other thing the town really does with them is we have a fire pond maintenance repair fund, somewhere.
But is all the ponds that are around they're not only our responsibility. In some cases, it's a private responsibility.
Correct.
And if the private responsibility isn't being, if the private ponds are not being maintained, do we have any ability to take action to encourage?
Good question. As of right now, everything is in pretty good shape.
Okay.
historically, Frank, I think we've seen really good cooperation between the fire department and the road crew with privately maintained fire ponds. You know, they've offered to help often when they can and how they can. And that relationship's worked pretty well. It's, you know, I'm sure that'll continue into the future.
I mean, there is a couple developments that, there's one particular one that I know hasn't been much maintenance done, and then there's another one that probably needs a little bit, but for the most part, not too bad.
But you're aware of all the ponds and where this is a problem, where your hand, I guess. Yeah. Good. Thanks. I asked one because there's one near me.
A couple of years ago, we dredged, didn't completely dredge them, but there was clean places where it was actually sucked the water out. We did a clean out on a whole bunch of them.
Thank you. Sorry to agree.
That's what we're here for. Emergency management, $5,100. Emergency communications, $4,000. Any more questions on the fire department? we'll move on to the highway department. Wages, $177,000. FICA Medicaid expenses, $13,600. Highway health insurance, $67,700. New Hampshire pension, $14,150. Gas and diesel, $30,000. Telephone and internet services, $3,000. Heavy equipment, parts and repairs, $20,000. You'll note that we overexpended that line item in the budget this year. There's a good chance we'll probably overspend that budget item again this year. The $20,000 is probably on the low end for that. There's other areas in the budget we've been able to make up the difference there, but that's kind of it's hard to judge kind of what that number is going to be from year to year. Some years we get lucky and don't have lots of expenses, and some years we get very unlucky and have lots. And we'll have probably a bigger discussion about the grader when we move on to the next articles, but that's one reason why we continue to see that line item overspent. But $20,000 should probably be okay for this year. Special equipment, $16,000. Supplies, small tools and oil, $5,000. Contract hire, milling, rental.
Missed one there, Jack. Go back to after special equipment.
Two, 16,000.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I said small tools and oil. I said 5,000 there. That's 16,000. The training and miscellaneous expenses is $5,000. I apologize if I'm not being clear. Please speak up. Gets a little monotonous running through all these numbers, so if I start to fade, give me a good kick. Yeah. Backhoe lease, $23,200. 2013 will be the last payment on the backhoe lease, and then we will own the backhoe and probably have to start a new fund to buy the next one. Utilities, $10,200. Sand, $24,000. Gravel, $12,000. Salt, $33,000. Culverts, $5,000. Highway road maintenance, $130,000. Street signs and flags, $2,200. Street lighting, $10,000. And bond interest, garage and salt shed, $68,700. On that item, again, that's a gross appropriation. If you go back to Article 5 and you see the $40,000 there, again, I'm not entirely clear on how this is going to end up on the floor during town meeting, but if it's like it is now, if Article 5 were to pass, we would ask for a motion from the floor to reduce the operating budget by $40,000, and where that number would come out of is the $68,700 that you see there. The balance would be the interest payment on that. So in this budget, when you look all the way at the end and you see the amount to be raised by taxes, you see the $1,577,000. That number includes both $40,000 from Article 5 and from Article 6. So the article that $40,000 only needs to go in one place. It's just we're not exactly sure what place exactly at this point. Any questions about the highway department? I believe that concludes all the expenses.
Transfer station.
Transfer station. I'm missing a page.
Page 4 of 7.
Page 4.
I got it somewhere. I just needed to flip it over. Thanks. Jackson Transfer Station. Wages from the transfer station, $50,000. That number you'll see is down from what was appropriated last year. It's down significantly from what we appropriated the preceding year. And again, that's a reflection of the new contract and the shared labor costs on the 75-25% split. That money is to reimburse Bartlett. Bartlett now pays all of the employee expenses, and then we reimburse Bartlett per the contract. That's why there's no longer, FICA and health care and pension expenses there. There's a new line item this year. It used to be joint operating account. We're changing that to the Jackson equipment account, and it's going from $4,000 to $10,000. Reasoning behind this one, Jackson's been appropriating money for that joint operating account for quite some time now, and we've never, it's been years, I think, since we had to use any money from that. Most of the non-employee expenses up at the transfer station are covered by recycling, so there hasn't been a need to. Bartlett hasn't been appropriating money for that line item for years now in their budget. This year we do need to, Jackson needs to purchase a new compactor bin, and the first estimate we got on that was for $9,000 and change, so we're asking for a $10,000 appropriation to pay for Jackson's bin up there. So that's why that number's in there like that. Operating expenses, $3,000. Hauling and rental fees, $16,000, and tipping fees at $40,000. Are there any questions regarding the transfer station? B?
Tipping fees have gone from 33 to 40?
Nope. Last year we asked for $40,000 in appropriations. We expended $33,000.
To keep it at 40?
We're going to keep it at 40. That's about what we've been appropriating over the years. That number hasn't changed in a while. John seemed to think that $40,000 should cover it. Tipping fees is one of those things where it's a judgment call. It's nice to have a little flexibility there so that we don't fall short there. About $40,000 should leave us well covered. Gino?
Good question. Now that you're a partner with Ballard's going to be billing you, we're paying the tipping fees separately, right?
Tipping fees are handled separately. It's it's Jackson's bin and Bartlett's bin. So.
But somewhere along the line, the town ought to plan on a scale. Because when you dump off, and what you estimate the weight is, when it gets up there, it may weigh a lot more. And that's a serious problem. And Bartlett for a while was losing $1,200 a month because of the miscalculation on the weight of the stuff that was being brought. Because you're doing it just visually. A truck load of shingles. Someone at the transfer station might think it weighs 1,000 pounds. They build them accordingly. It gets up there, it weighs 6,000 pounds. You pay more. So you really ought to, Peter Kelly, rest his soul, 20 years ago, put $49,000 in the budget for a scale. Bartlett should have a scale. If we're going to be paying this way, you're going to have to believe what they tell you. Well,
Gina, you're talking about different expenses, though. The tipping fees that you see here are for the household tipping fees into the regular bin. We don't share any money with Bartlett in regards to that at all.
Right. You're going to be shipping demolition debris more now, aren't you?
What's that?
Aren't you going to be shipping more demolition debris?
More demolition debris?
You're not going to be burning. Burning laws have changed, right?
They have, but they haven't gone into effect yet.
Right, but when they do, is it going to be this year?
I don't believe that's happening this year.
Yeah, well, it doesn't happen this year. At some point, you have to.
The rules are getting more strict on that this year, but as far as the scales are concerned, it's been something that we've been talking about for a while, and it's a great idea. That's separate than the tipping fees number that you see here.
Yes. The money,
the revenue that we get for our construction debris is handled separately than Bartlett, so they're not together,
Right.
not commingled.
Right.
We receive revenue to cover for that expense that covers all of our outgoing expenses for it.
all
So
I'm saying, you're still estimating the weights.
it is, and it would
That's
be.
all. That's all I'm saying. You should get scales. That's it.
I'm just trying to clarify that we don't share those expenses with Bartlett. Those are
Right.
separate expenses.
Right. I get that.
Any more questions regarding the transfer station? Health inspector, $500. Animal control officer, $500. Animal control offers FICA and Medicaid expenses, $40. Public welfare, $6,000. Any questions there? Moving on to recreation and parks. Bartlett Recreation Department, $6,700. Anybody have any questions regarding that expense? Fireworks, $3,000. Jackson Conservation Commission, $2,000. PEG Channel 3, $5,000. And videotaping meetings, $3,000. Any questions there? Sarah?
Sir, this videotaping meetings, does that mean that we will be on channel 3?
It does not mean it will be on Channel 3. They're two separate expenses. Several town meetings ago, I'm going to guess probably, we were still at the town hall for our town meetings. I believe it was either the last or second to last meeting that we had there. The voters asked the select board to at least get viewing privileges back for Channel 3. The $5,000 that you see there is just to get that. Conway has offered to us, and the station that runs the local PEG channel has offered to us, I believe it's about another $3,000 or so to get coverage for the town on that station. And if that's something that the voters are interested in having happen, I would recommend either a motion from the floor to increase that number, or some sort of, input to us to direct us to do so. Right now what we're offering is basically the ability to view Channel 3.
But you can view the meetings online, so.
That's kind of the alternative that we've offered, is that, we have our own employee that does recording of video meetings. That is available on the internet to watch pretty much live. And it also enables you the ability to go back and watch it at any point in time that you want to. The disability with Channel 3 is that, Jackson's coverage would probably be few and far between, and you'd probably have to stay up and watch it at like 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Sarah?
So does that mean that the filming is being done tonight? Is there a disc at the library, for instance, that you can go and watch it if you're not a computer, or if you don't have a computer?
We do have a disc available here, but I like the idea of it being maybe made available at the library. That makes a lot more sense. It's a great idea.
Should be able to do it right away.
Go to the library, watch it on YouTube.
Oh, you can?
Oh, yeah.
So you can go in there anytime and watch it? It's-
YouTube.
Any more?
The link still on the town website, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, give an instruction sheet to the librarian. as to how to find it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I bet anything they know how to do that, but it would be nice to give them an instruction sheet. That's a good idea.
Any further questions?
What's the correct number then? Because the Article 6 has a different number than what's at the bottom of the spreadsheet.
The $1,300.
Yeah, $1,300
That's,
off,
that's
$1,300.
the increase for the hydrants that we didn't get.
Hank, when I put the warrant article together for Article 6, I didn't include the $1,300 extra for the hydrant. That is in the spreadsheet, but it didn't get translated into what you see for Article 6 here. Thanks for picking that up.
Right, thank you.
Go ahead.
That brings us to Article 7. Article 7 is to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $200,000 to be placed into the existing road reconstruction capital reserve fund. Fund balance is zero, and said funds to come from the unreserved fund balance. A couple things to explain about this article, technically anyway. That is a capital reserve fund that was created in 2009 and was not funded pending some investigations into how best to maintain our roads, and we'll go on to explain a little bit more of that. The fund balance that you see for the unreserved fund balance, you'll see that it's for the ending of fiscal year 2011, the unreserved fund balance was $1,013,045. The reason why you'll see that number here as opposed to what it is, say, at the end of 2012 is because this is the last known number of what we knew for the unreserved fund balance. And you'll see in any year going back that you'll always see the unreserved fund balance reported for the two prior fiscal years. That being because at this point in time we don't have the exact number for what the unreserved fund balance is at the end of 2012. We probably won't have that number known for specifically for another probably month or so at this point, and that's how it is most years. We can project that the unreserved fund balance for the end of 2012 is going to be a little bit higher than the number that you see here, but not much higher. But for reporting purposes, for legal purposes, we can only go by the number that is an exact known, so that's why you see this number here. That unreserved fund balance is really extraordinarily high. We had left it that high in previous years on purpose because what was pending over us, what we didn't know about, was the statewide education property tax. And the town would have been looking, for instance, in 2012, by March of 2012, we would have had to pay $567,000 to the state had that statewide property tax gone into effect. It didn't go into effect. The legislature's postponed it, pretty much postponed it indefinitely. We still contribute a little bit of money to the state for an education property tax, but certainly not what we were looking at before. So in prior years, we had left the unreserved fund balance high because for concerns of the statewide property tax. This $1 million is nearly 25% of our gross appropriations. Our gross appropriations for the town, for the school, for the county, and the state is approximately $4.5 million. For this year. Did we take that number out, Al? I thought we had that in there before. No, we didn't have that in there, I'm sorry. We just had the gross appropriation for the town. But the gross appropriation, the total gross appropriations are around $4.5 million. The Department of Revenue Administration recommends that your unreserved fund balance, meaning your surplus funds, should be in the 10 to 15% range, is where it should be. The Local Government Center and the New Hampshire Municipal Association, they're a little bit more cautious, if you will. They recommend an unreserved fund balance of between 12 to 18% of gross revenues. And there's a number of different factors on why you should maintain an unreserved fund balance. Probably the biggest reason is for cash flow reasons. It's not necessarily a rainy day account. It's there mostly for cash flow reasons and for unexpected things that can happen in a budget year. But at any rate, our unreserved fund balance is much higher than it probably should be if we're going to be fair to the taxpayers. So then our next question comes, well, how do we return it to the taxpayers? And at the rate we're going, we've been using anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000 a year to kind of stabilize our tax rate. For instance, in 2012, in October, our tax rate really should have been $10.44. We utilized $100,000 from the unreserved fund balance to lower that down to $10.13. And we're still going to end up with an unreserved fund balance that's going to be the same this year. It's actually going to be a little bit higher. So we really need to come up with a plan on how do we reduce the unreserved fund balance and at the same time not take any given fiscal year and artificially lower our tax rate so much that we're going to see rapid, up and down fluctuations in the tax rate. Everybody with me still? Everybody really excited about this? At any rate, so we really need to look at, well, how do we return that money to the taxpayers? And this board's thought is that, well, probably the best way to utilize those funds is to invest in long-term capital. And in 2009, we created this capital reserve fund to try to figure out a way to maintain our roads. And in 2009, our thinking was that, well, we need to look at bonds and see what doing a long-term bond is going to do, and also how to repair our roads. And in 2009, the thinking was we're going to try to reclaim most of our roads because that's the most bang for the buck. Well, we had gone on and had done that for a couple of years, and we were starting to reclaim roads. And at this point in time, with the way our roads are decaying and where they're at now, we really probably can't afford to reclaim all the roads that we originally planned to back in 2009. And so we're kind of looking at more, because we had done that, we had let some roads kind of go more than we should. And we're looking at, well, how do we catch up now to get back to the point where we can maintain our roads to the level that we should without at the same time growing the tax rate too much. When we look at a bond right now, to bond our roads really the way what we need to do, back in 2009, the study that was done, or 2010, the study that was done, said that we need about $3.5 million in order to rebuild the roads the way we need to in order to make a bond worth getting in the first place. In today's dollars, we're probably looking at closer to $4.5, perhaps $5 million to do that. That's going to be an impact on the tax rate. Just the bond note would raise the tax rate probably in the range between $13 and $15 per thousand. And that's something that this board does not think that is really can be absorbed by the taxpayers in this town. So what we'd like to see happen is we'd like to utilize $200,000 from the unreserved fund balance, place that in the capital reserve fund that we created for road reconstruction, and in 2013, the plan would be to use our ordinary money that we budget for roads and do what we had planned for 2013, plus catch up with some of the roads that we neglected over the past couple of years, hoping that we were going to be able to reclaim roads, and we're not going to be able to do that. The plan for 2013 is to reclaim some of the roads that we have still. We're looking to do a reclaim on Black Mountain Road, just the hill on Black Mountain Road, because shimming and top coating that just isn't going to cut it at this point in time. But there are several other roads that we'd be looking to shim and top coat to bring back to the point where they're a little bit more stable. One thing that we've seen over the past couple of years, climate change is here, and it's affecting us right now. It's affecting our roads huge. I don't know if people have noticed, but you drive around town and there's potholes where none ever existed. The sides of the roads are falling apart, and without something happening at the state level, the federal level, we really have to come up with a plan on how we plan on dealing with it at the same time, not blowing the tax rate out of the water. And we feel that this is the best plan to do that. It would enable us this year to really catch up on some roads that have been neglected. Jay, you can help me out here. I know that we were looking at the
Carter Notch, about 40 grand worth of share. Whitney's about $65,000 worth of share. Thornhill, $65,000 worth of share. Highlands, $30,000, and side roads on Tire Roll at $65,000.
And one thing that we're really looking at now is that, to keep the tax rate where it is, there's not a lot we can do in the bond department. That doesn't mean that 4, 5, 6 years out from now, we might not be in a position to do that. We probably will. 7 years out from now, we're going to be looking at roughly $250,000 a year less in bond payments than what we currently have on the books. And this is a way to get through the next 7 years to maintain the roads at a reasonable level and at the same time without impacting the tax rate too much. Frank?
If I remember correctly, some years ago, we reduced the reserve fund balance dramatically and significantly in favor of, I think, actually lowering the tax rate. How low at that time did it, if I remember correctly, how low did we take the unreserved fund balance? Subsequent year we had to fairly significant tax rate increase.
That is a little bit different picture than what we're looking at here, and I'll explain why. That year, the fund balance was around a little over $700,000, and $500,000 of it had been utilized to offset expenditures. The following fiscal year, however, those expenditures remained in the budget. This is not an expenditure that's going to remain in the budget. This is a one-time expenditure from the unreserved fund balance. So for fiscal year 2014, you're not going to see a request for $200,000. And that's the main difference between what was done then versus what we're asking for now. Gino?
Just a quick, that was actually a mistake at the time because the select board then was working on an assumption that there was a $1.1 million balance. But the problem was it was this is 2 years back. There wasn't the fund balance was closer to $750,000. So when the $400,000 was pulled out, of course, the next year it had to be made back up. So it went down. 1 year went down 24%, the next year not 24%.
Yeah, and
something like that.
it's again when you see in the Warren article where it's the number you see is for 2011. It's because of the way our tax year begins April, our budget year begins in January. We don't set the tax rate for the budget year until October, so it's a crazy number to try to pin down and point to, and with proper planning you can really know what that number is going to be, and that's why the biggest difference is it's a one-time expense, and we know what it currently is going to be, and again it's more a reflection of how to. We know the unreserved fund balance is higher than it should be, and this is, we think, the wisest way to lower that down. Gino?
One quick question for Jay. Jay, we have about $200,000 a year in the roads now, give or take.
Last year was 200,000, but this year it's less than that because the highway block grant is a lot less.
Can you handle another? A total, say, 400,000 in a year? Can you get that much work done?
Our total is 315
Oh, well, you should.
for 2013, if that's what people.
Yeah, they voted, yeah.
And it's all shimmin, so most of it's shimmin except for Black Mountain.
Where does Thorn Hill Road come in? That's in pretty good.
Shimmin covered the whole thing. I wanted to reclaim it, but we were talking
250?
100 and Thorn Hill 65 grand. It's going to be 100 and something thousand to reclaim it and put a base coat of pavement on it. Then next year you'd have to turn around and top coat the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we kind of said this time around we're just going to shim it again and
If it
get
gets a
as
lot
many
of
years.
traffic, you're going to be back at it again in a few years.
It's-
There might be something you want to look at.
And the road savings, we're going to be looking at, pretty seriously every 5 years probably. And right now we're behind the curve, and this is a way to try to get ahead of it. But your question, Gino, about whether they can get that much done in 1 year, that's a good question. And that's why we're suggesting to put the money in the capital reserve fund, because it's a non-lapsing fund. That money would stay in that capital reserve fund, unless the voters voted to put it somewhere else.
So if they voted in March, he won't come back to the town the following March to use that money.
He will not, no.
No, okay, because that was a question that came up.
shouldn't be any, like I said, it's all mostly shimmy, so there shouldn't be any problem.
You can find spots for it.
It's just a matter of hiring a paver to come in and start putting it down.
If that article is voted down, what happens to that $200,000? Does it get returned to the taxpayer, or would that just go in the general coffer again?
There's two parts to that question. Well, this is actually on one part, but the money we're asking for is an appropriation, and that's two parts. One, we're asking for the appropriation, and two, we're asking for the voters to pull it out of the unreserved fund balance. The voters, by this being on the floor, can do, three things here. They can vote it up, they can vote it down, or they can vote it up, but not choose to pull it from the unreserved fund balance. They can also change so they can do four things. They can also change the amount to something else. And something I should have clarified from the beginning too, these warrant articles are a first draft. And you'll see after each warrant article, or after most of them, some that you don't, because we don't actually vote on those. Selectmen are in favor. All of them say 3 to 0 to 0. We have not voted on any of these warrant articles yet as to whether or not we support them and what the tally is on those. Again, this is a first draft, and I just put all of those numbers in because that's the numbers I put in. So we do need to actually, as a board, go through these and vote to recommend them as a board or not. And if the, well, after we discuss Article 7, I wouldn't mind to go back to Article 5 and actually take a vote tally to see where we're at on those. Article 6, that doesn't happen. It's the operating budget is recommended by the select board, so that's not one that we vote to recommend or not. But back to Article 7, that's basically the long and the short of that. Are there any questions, or does anyone want anything clarified about that? I guess back to the question, we'll probably do that at the end of at this meeting actually, because at some point we need, as a board, we need to vote up or down on these articles, and we can do that at the end of the public hearing. We'll move on to Article 8. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $125,000 to be placed into the existing heavy highway vehicle capital reserve fund. That fund balance as of 12/31/2012, $50,028. The sum of $100,000 to come from the unreserved fund balance, and the remainder of the $25,000 to be raised from taxes. Again, this is kind of a two-part article, and this heavy highway vehicle reserve fund was created to purchase a grader for the town. And when we established this fund, we are funding it at the rate of $25,000 a year. Well, $25,000 a year gets us a new grader probably by maybe 2010. The one that we currently have.
2010.
Thanks. I'm wanting to go back in time. This is 2013, right? So if we're at the current rate, it's going to be a good 7 years anyway before we're going to be able to purchase a new grader. The grader that we currently have is on its last legs, and we really feel that any debate at this point isn't whether we need a new grader or not. It's whether the town really wants a grader or not. We feel that we have some strong arguments as to why the town does need a grader. The one we currently have, is going to twofold problems. First problem being that maintenance on the old grader are going to continue to go up from year to year significantly. Nobody makes parts for this grader anymore. We might not even be able to get parts for it. So it's literally on its last legs. And the idea behind this article is to, again, remove money from the unreserved fund balance and apply it to a long-term capital expense. The grader that we currently have is how many years old, Jay?
It's an 86.
And since I don't know what year it is, how old does that make it, John?
26 years old, so somewhere around 26 years old.
29.
Yeah. So a grader really is a long-term capital investment, and the idea behind it, $125,000, $25,000 is what we've been putting into it, so that expense would remain the same, and that would be coming from taxes as it has been. The $100,000 extra dollars that would put into it would give Jay and the select board some options for this year. And the options it gives us is to consider purchasing a used grader. The market rate now for used heavy equipment is pretty good. But it's not necessarily that, tomorrow we know one's available. For an all-wheel drive grader, it can be the kind of thing that you might find right now, you might not find for 6 months, we might not find it this year. But the idea behind this and what the voters should know is that if this is voted up, our intentions for this year would be to seek a used grader on the current market. If one was available that made sense to buy, we would seriously consider buying it. If one doesn't show up to buy, we would still consider purchasing a brand new grader either the following year or the year after that, and hope the current grader that we have lasts that long. And that's the idea behind that warrant article. Jay, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
You've priced out used
Yeah,
graders
we
in
had,
the market.
like, from 175 to, there's 2 or 3 or 4 good ones available between 175 and 200. Southwick Milton had 3 of them at 200 that were pretty low hours, 2008s, pretty nice rigs. So that's kind of, we did find some.
Yeah, that's good.
And found some good ones. Basically, if you look at 30-year machines, it's the cheapest piece of equipment we own. I mean, the one we bought cost $93,000. We had it 26 years. Cost us $3,500 a year to own it. Just not include maintenance, that type of stuff, but to buy it. If you look at a brand new one, it's going to cost us $10,000 a year to buy it for a 30-year machine. Our trucks that we buy are 10-year trucks, and those cost us $20,000 a year to buy them. So it's an expensive piece of equipment. Nobody wants to buy it, but it's by far the cheapest piece of equipment we own.
Gino?
I don't want to be anti-plug. I'm not trying to be. Progress to Stall Arca had the same request for several years. The departed former road agent after Arthur had the same request, and Jay, bless him, has the same request. The only thing I ever asked any of the 3 of them to do was to get the operating hours that they used that machine in a given year, so that we could make a comparison of, say, you're using something 40 hours a year, and you were going to pay $10,000 a year for it, or you were going to rent one for 40 hours a year. That's all I ever wanted to know. So,
well, basically, we don't have exact hours on ours because there's been a couple different hour meters in it. Best we can come up with is the one we got 6,000 hours over the course of 26 years. On average, some years it was 600 hours a year. Some years it's 200. It all depends on the winter you get. Our primary reason, if it wasn't for the snow and the hills, we'd be fine. But it's the primary reason for it, winter use, not grading the roads. It's a big difference between pushing up and down them hills with that than there is with the truck.
no, I'm not negative on it. Just if you were just renting, if you use it when 200 hours a year.
Renting's out of the question for all-wheel drive. You can't, they won't, all-wheel drive is 6-wheel drive. They very rarely rent all-wheel drive graders, and if you do rent one, you're not going to get it with plow equipment. And I do have a price here on rent, and it's about $12,000 a month without plow equipment to rent a cat grader.
I
Right?
recommend if you buy one, you buy new. I wouldn't buy used.
It definitely makes,
If it came to that,
it definitely makes more physical sense to
you
buy
don't want to buy
it.
someone else's 10-year-old headaches. That's the easy clause.
Do we have any idea of what it would cost to hire the grader work done?
Right back to what I just said,
I mean,
though,
I'm putting aside the fact that plowing snow. I mean,
Yep.
You don't have to plow snow, you don't have to have a grader to plow snow. They're not made for that, exactly.
well, probably most people will disagree with you on that.
But I'm just saying, to hire somebody to come in and do whatever grader work you need done, wouldn't that be practical?
For summertime, yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, to do the dirt work.
Summertime, you could, but you gotta, you're not necessarily gonna get them when you want them. You know, people
Well-
start complaining with the weather because of the potholes, and you gotta wait a month or 3 weeks to get the grader there. I mean, that is a possibility.
Well, you know, it's good to have 2 or 3 cars in your garage in case you break down, but I don't think you need to have stuff like that.
I definitely agree with you, Ray. Summertime,
This
yes.
is a very expensive piece of equipment to have in a town this size, I'll tell you.
Bob?
Now, what do all the other towns do with, they don't get rid of stuff.
We got a more percentage of hills than any town around.
Well, that's probably true, but I mean,
Fact.
but you're talking about hills, you're talking about snowplow.
Yeah.
I don't agree with using a grader to snowplow.
Disagree with you, disagree with you 1,000%.
Well, I don't care.
Anybody that's drove truck or run equipment for years is gonna tell you the same thing.
Well, I was in the equipment business quite a.
Well, you might have sold them, but that doesn't mean you sat in a seat for 20 years.
I still think that it would be well to look into hiring somebody. There's a lot of people out there looking for work.
How many?
I don't know.
Still,
who
you're
they
not
are.
gonna do away with the winter though.
I'm not gonna tell you who they are, who to hire. I'm just saying,
Are you gonna do away with winter?
Jay, Ray, Bob, you had something that you wanted to add.
I looked in a rent one, and it's $135 an hour with the operator.
Yep, that's about right, for summertime use, yep.
And with the trucks they got today, they're a lot heavier than they used to be. And we got through the year of '69 with 10 feet of snow, and a lot lighter trucks. And I think those trucks today can handle whatever snow we get.
The winter did what, the Oshkosh in '69?
Yeah.
That's an equal truck to the brand new ones we got.
Yeah.
Size
You
wise.
got 2.
You've got 2 heavy trucks now,
Yep.
and they had light duty trucks compared to what you've got today.
Why did we buy it in 1986 then?
Well, anything breaks down that you're able to.
Why did we buy it in 1986?
lot of,
Grader,
We bought it because we needed it in 1986. Well, why go backwards?
the one we had was about 30 years old.
Why go backwards? If you bought a truck and a grader that year. You bought a 4-wheel drive international that year and a grader.
But I think we're gonna try to move this conversation on. Does anybody else have something different that they want to contribute or question? We'll move on to the next article. To see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of repairing Dundee Road. The reason we put this into a separate warrant article this year is really the same that we had it for a separate warrant article last year. Last year, however, we were seeing some reimbursement from FEMA for the money that was spent, and we need about $25,000 more to really make those repairs effective. It's a separate warrant article because it really comes down to how the voters want to use and maintain Dundee Road, and we thought it best left to you to decide that. It's an expense that's not necessary to keep the road going. The road right now is probably better than it has been in a long time, but we just invested a lot of money in repairing it to those conditions, and another $25,000 in gravel will go a long ways to mitigating any future damages to the road. And that's why that in there. Jay, did you have anything you wanted to add more than that?
Basically, that's another thin coat of gravel for the top coat everywhere. And
How about on the paved Jackson side? I just went over it today. Obviously, it's very frosty, but
Yep.
is there any?
Part of the, go back to the 200,000, actually 365,000 put in the roads this year. Part of the, I'm hoping 2014 to tackle Shimmin Hall Dundee. And I want to reclaim from Doublehead parking lot to just up around the hill where culverts really bad and always have. Reclaim seems to have helped. Anyway, we've reclaimed, it helps that particular situation. Up on Tyrol, the culverts that did that, it doesn't do it as bad. So part of the plan is to do a lot of Dundee the following year.
Cool.
Any more questions, comments? Article 10, see the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $25,000 to be placed in the Highway Truck Capital Reserve Fund. Fund balance $50,162,000. That's what we've been contributing to that fund over the years. Questions, comments? Article 11, to see the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $38,000 for the purpose of highway repair and reconstruction. The sum of $8,200 to come from Special Revenue Fund, known as the Highway Repair and Reconstruction Fund. Balance $8,263, and the remainder of the $29,800 to be offset with the State Highway Block Grant received in 2013. Questions, comments about that? Article 12, to see the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $50,000 to deposit it into the existing Fire Truck Capital Reserve Fund. Balance as of 2012, $209,098. Questions or comments there?
Are we due for a truck soon, or are we due for a truck soon?
2, 3, 4 years. I mean, if you go by what NFPA tells you, we're well beyond. Hopefully, by the plan, if we keep raising 50,000 capital reserve, by the time we'll have most of the money to buy it, and won't have to ask for much.
Article 13, to see the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $20,000 to be deposited in the State Aid Reconstruction Expendable Trust Fund. Fund balance $9,433. That's the mutual aid for Route 16B primarily. Hopefully we'll see state aid this year. It's not a guarantee in these budget climates though, but we still feel it's wise for us to appropriate our half of it anyway. Questions or comments about that? Article 14, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $69,503 for the support of the Jackson Public Library. The sum of $52,533 to be raised from taxation, and the remainder, $16,950 to come from library trust funds and gifts. This number was about, I think, a little less than $1,000 increase from last year. Any questions or comments about that? Article 15, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in the Police Cruiser Capital Reserve Fund. Fund balance $17,675. I believe 2014 will be looking to purchase a new cruiser to stay in the proper cycle there. Any questions or comments there? Article 16, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to be deposited in the Police Department Equipment Expendable Trust Fund. Fund balance $5,728. Any questions or comments? Article 17, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,980.98 to be deposited into the Baker Prospect Farm Trust. Fund balance $50,616. Said funds to come from the unreserved fund balance, which represents the same income amount from the Baker Prospect Farm's 2012 timber sales. basically we take the timber sales from that, gets deposited into our general fund, which ends up in the unreserved fund balance, and this is transferring basically the funds from there to the Conservation Commission.
What would we use this for? What was the, I mean, I understand where the money came from, but how would we spend this money?
This money is primarily used to maintain the Baker Prospect Farm area.
Have we expended any money in the effort of doing that, or?
And how much have we spent over the last year or two there, other than the survey?
Dick?
Well, you're doing mowing every year. There'll probably over time there'll be a little road maintenance to do water bars or culverts. Although the Forest Service left a nice set of them. So there is an ongoing yearly expense for the property up there that the town must use it.
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking about how much have we spent? How much does it cost?
Sure. I think the mowing is what, $2,500 a year. I know they had the money for the survey.
That was done in
Oh, yes, and clearing around hand clearing around the apple trees. So I don't know what the figures per year are, but.
I think in 2011 was when the survey was done, and I think that was around $12,000. Some of the larger maintenance cuts that were done up there, I believe that was done in 2012. Was that done last year? And that was around $12,000, I believe. So money is spent from it. Ideally, there was a large cut this year. Most of the time that cut's not as large as it is, so there's not as much funds available to be placed in that fund. But that's what it's there for. Any more questions or comments?
And that can only be used for Prospect Farm?
The timber sales?
No, the
Fund.
The fund.
The fund? Yeah. The money from the timber sales doesn't have to go there. But that's what we think makes the most sense to do with the money. Article 18, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,535 to be placed in the transfer site building and recycling equipment expendable trust fund. Fund balance $86,014. Said funds to come from the unreserved fund balance. Again, that's basically a transfer of money. Revenue from the transfer station goes into the general fund, which ends up in the fund balance. And this is a way to transfer that money into a expendable trust fund for the transfer station. As Gino noted earlier, if the town were to purchase scales up there or to do any kind of capital improvements up there, this is a fund that we could utilize to do that. So we're really in pretty good shape as far as future capital expenses up at the transfer station are concerned from a tax standpoint anyway. It shouldn't impact the tax rate. Now that the relationship with the town of Bartlett is very positive, this year we'll probably be taking a serious look at long-term capital improvements for the transfer station site. We feel as a board that it makes sense to keep putting this money back into there. Hopefully we'll be using it someday soon because there are improvements that should be done up there. Any questions or comments on this one? Article 19, to see the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35(1) for the purpose of maintaining, constructing a septic system and supplying water to the old library building to be known as the Old Library Capital Reserve Fund, and raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in said fund, and furthermore to appoint the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend. This is a capital reserve fund that we are asking to be formed for short-term improvements to the old library building, and also to establish a long-term capital reserve fund for the maintenance of the building over the years. Dick?
What is that nice little building going to be used for with septic, water, and obviously heat? Then, if you put water in, you got to keep it warm. What is the purpose of the building?
For 2 years now, we've had a committee looking into use for the old building there. As far as heat's concerned, Dick, we have to heat the building regardless of whether there's water in it or not. There's, oh, I shouldn't say we have to. We are heating the building, and the reason being is because that's the best way to maintain the woodwork that's in there. If the building's not heated, the woodwork in the building is pretty much going to deteriorate very quickly. So we feel as though we need to heat the building one way or the other. The reason behind wanting the water supply and septic system for the old library building is the committee felt as though that's the best way to ensure the building actually be used by someone in town. That use is really to be determined. I thought I saw Denise here earlier. She is. Denise, do you want to contribute anything to?
I'm so sorry, I lost that last paragraph. I was looking at something else, so you'll need to repeat.
We're talking about the old library building and the capital reserve fund that we're asking for the town to support for it. And you know, your committee or that you belong to is looking into the use of the building.
I'm sorry, I'm not on the committee. I'm not on the old library committee. I'm a library trustee.
I'm sorry, that's
Susan May is.
Susan?
Susan May is. I think I am.
You are, Susan. I apologize. Sorry, Denise.
Okay.
Susan, did you want to add?
Wake you up.
We have had several events, and we publicize them in e-news, and I'm sorry, Dick, that you haven't maybe been notified, but we've had several wonderful events there. We feel that with plumbing, we'll have more events, and we'll have more people using it. And it seems like every time I get there for a meeting, I have to go to the bathroom. And I want to wash my hands. So I think it's a logical, you know, for the 2013 and on, I think it's a logical thing to do. You can't go outside behind a tree anymore.
One of the aspects of the $10,000 being appropriated too, in order to get water and septic in the building, it's going to be significantly more than the $10,000. And what the committee's hoping for and what we're hoping for as well from that is that it's basically seed money to start to get people excited about private donations to the building. You know, in order to get the water and septic in there, it's probably going to be $20,000 to $30,000 to do so. And this is really a way to hoping to get the ball rolling towards private funds to come into the building to be able to get there.
Is the church amenable to the idea of the septic system going in on their property?
It's not on their property.
The plan so far calls for the septic system actually going on the property behind the church. There are church members that are on the committee that have been involved with the process from the start. Excuse me. So they're very well aware of where they're at with the design and what the plans are. Frank?
When I read this quickly, it wasn't, I thought the word maintaining only applied to the water system and sewage, and you might reword it slightly so it's clear that the maintenance applies to the entire building.
Thank you, Frank. It also needs exterior painting and some repairs.
Well, the word maintaining there is not pertaining to that, so I think we maybe can clarify that better. Frank, these articles are being reviewed by DRA and Town Council, and hopefully, if it needs to be changed, they'll pick up on that. So we'll wait to hear from them as to whether or not the wording is proper or not. So Frank, do you have any immediate suggestions on how we might be able to change the wording there?
You might put the word maintaining after septic system and supplying water. So it's constructing a septic system, supplying water, and maintenance of the old library. Like that.
That's a much better way to do it. Thanks, Frank. Any other questions or comments? Article 20, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the purpose of developing the master plan and build-out analysis. The planning board is in the process of developing a new master plan, and a warrant article is required in order to appropriate funds to start developing the plan. Any questions or comments
What
on
are the
this?
funds for? The planning board works without funds. Who gets the $15,000?
The planning board does not work without funds.
No, but I mean in general.
This would be for
There-
both.
Is this for a consultant?
This would be, this would most likely be to engage a professional to create a build-out analysis, as
Okay.
well as to pay for survey costs of the
Okay,
town.
thank you. Yeah, planning board employees don't pay is what I meant.
No.
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 So the $15,000 is for the plan, hiring out.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's not. Thanks, that's going to change that bottom line number. Ella just picked up that the $15,000 that we have under Article 20 is not in the Excel spreadsheet on the budget. So the bottom line number that you're seeing for 2013, the $1,577,227.73 should be increased by $15,000. That should be negligible on the tax rate. Article 21, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the purpose of controlling the spread of knotweed on town properties and roads through the use of herbicides and other methods. Back a couple of years, the town raised some money to try to control the spread of knotweed. It's a persistent little bugger, continues to do it. We could have put this in other areas of the budget, but we're not sure if it's something the town really wants to support or not. $2,500 would go a long ways towards being able to control the spread. One more round of trying to knock it out. Maybe successful. It's one of those things that we'll never be able to get rid of entirely, but we wish to do it as a town, and that's a way to do it. Any questions, comments about that? Article 22, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,358 for the support of White Mountain Community Health Center to help meet healthcare needs of the uninsured and underinsured residents of the town of Jackson. This was submitted by petition. Any questions or comments there? Article 23, to see the town.
You got a little bit.
1694 on that one, instead of
The article and the proposed number are different on the spreadsheet.
Yep.
last year's number.
That number
Should be 1694.
should be $1,694. Was the request in the petition. Any questions there? Article 23, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $716 for the support of the Northern Human Services to assist the Mental Health Center, submitted by petition. Any?
I don't see it on there. Miss it?
I did not add that to the spreadsheet.
Okay.
I wrote it in by hand, but I didn't put it in the actual spreadsheet. So that's going to add to, oh, I gave you the wrong spreadsheet to use. You might have probably put it into yours.
Okay, put it on there sometime.
700, 760.
Article 24, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to support Jackson Home Delivered Meals, congregate meals, transportation, and program services provided by the Gibson Center for Senior Services, submitted by petition. Any questions or comments? Article 25, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 for Tri-County Community Action. That's for fuel support. Any questions there?
Yeah.
Ray?
Tri-County thing is totally into legality. They're having a big fight going on, and it's not even highly flexible now. So I don't know if that affects this article or not, but people have been fired, people have left, and I don't know just where it's at, but
They've lost a lot of programs.
I just bring that to
Right.
Good point, Ray.
They still have their fuel assistance program is still viable, which is what this monies would be for. But you're right, they're kind of in receivership right now, and they've lost a lot. Right. Right. Yeah. I'm
If
sure
they don't
there's a
exist, we
way
won't give them any money.
to
right.
safeguard that, make sure that it's...
Yeah, no,
Right.
good point.
But this was submitted by petition, so we submit them as we receive them. Article 26, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the Early Supports and Services Program of Children Unlimited, Inc., submitted by petition.
Did we do that last year?
We did that last year. Article 27, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $679 in support of Starting Point, providing advocacy and support of victims of domestic and sexual violence and their children. Submitted by petition. That might say 678 on that
Yeah,
sheet,
it does
John.
say, yep, it's off by about.
That should be 679.
Any questions or comments there? Article 28, to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 for the Eastern Slope Airport Authority for its use in maintaining and improving the Eastern Slope Regional Airport, submitted by petition. Any questions there? The next three articles are warrant articles to close the Capital Reserve Fund, the Expendable Trust Fund, and the other Capital Reserve Fund that were created for the public safety facility and salt and sand sheds. Those Capital Reserve Funds and Expendable Trust Funds are no longer necessary, and that's a way to discontinue them. It takes a vote of the town to do so. Those funds would go into the general fund and then end up in the unreserved fund balance. And that's why we're kind of asking for a pre-return of that in Article 5 in the beginning. Any questions about those at all? If all of those pass, we'd be looking at net to be raised from taxes right around $1,538,000. That would leave the tax rate for the town portion to be $3.90 per thousand. On this sheet, you'll see $4 per thousand. The bottom line number there is going to be $1,592,229, basically. That would result in a $4 tax rate per thousand. But if everything passes, that number would be reduced by $40,000, and that's why the actual tax rate, if everything passes, would be $3.90 per thousand for the town side, which would be a decrease from last year's $3.95 in the overall budget. Are there any more questions regarding the 2013 budget? Joyce?
This is sort of a question that I just brought in our library minutes from Tuesday's meeting. I was instructed to do that so that the trustees of the trust funds know if there's a library account that has a zero balance in it, and just as a housekeeping, a housekeeping item, just to get that closed that account totally, the trustees voted to do that, so is that supposed to be an article in here? As these, I'm just looking at your last ones here. Is that supposed to follow with those?
It depends how the account was formed. If it was formed by the trustees, then no, it would not. If it was formed by the legislative body, then it would have to be voted by the legislative body to discontinue the account.
That's the purpose.
It does have to be closed by a warrant article. I'm the trustee of the trust fund, Helene McKeskey, and I was the one who alerted Diane that these accounts are just empty and they need to be closed formally at a vote. So a warrant article is necessary to close that account.
Okay. Well, we can look to do that for 2014.
The one that specifically Joyce is talking about was the one to build the new library. And all those funds are expended, so there's no money in them. I can give you the account number and all that.
Very good. Yeah.
So that's not going to happen this year?
It's probably not necessary to happen for this year. We can look at it this year.
It doesn't seem critical, but no. I just, I was supposed to hurry up and get the minutes done and bring them in so that could be.
It's nice to have those types of things discontinued so that they're not hanging around anymore, for clarity and transparency. But we can look to do that for this year to get on the warrant for next year.
When the warrant articles have to be submitted together, do one of the things have to be submitted?
They need to be pretty much submitted by the last ability to have a public hearing on them. This is the first public hearing on the budget. We would have time to technically have another budget hearing on the budget. However, as far as getting the actual warrant to the printers is concerned, and to get public notices properly executed, it really, like today's pretty much the last day to be able to do that. If it's going on the warrant, it would literally be probably for next Friday would be the latest something could get in. So if there's something out there that's really important, you'd need to get through to us pretty quickly. At this point in time, it would basically the only thing that can go on the warrant would be something placed on by the Board of Selectmen. We still have the ability to do that, but logistically that's getting more and more difficult by the day. So, unless it's something critical, this is basically the last day to be able to do it.
So by the 1st of January, the end of January, or 1st of February, what's a good date?
The town meeting book says no later than the 5th Tuesday prior to the actual town meeting, which was this last Tuesday.
2 days ago.
It's nice to know those things in the fall, start discussing it in November, and really kind of have most of the plan finalized by December. For instance, this year the library had been asking for return of revenue from the library.
We thought that was all set.
And I thought it was all set too. It's a revenue item, and I believe that that just needed to go on the regular town warrant for the General Assembly. When I read the RSA on it today, to do the wording for the warrant article, I discovered that it has to go on the ballot. And technically, we could still get it on the ballot, but it's almost impossible given 7 days notice for public hearing. And then, so there's basically no way to get it to the printer in time for it to be on the ballot and to get the ballots out to the the voters that are not here, not be present for the voting day. Absentee ballots, sorry, my mind's a little bit jumpy. So that had to go on the ballot, and there was no way to execute that for this year. So we'll need to make sure that, fall of this year, we take a look at setting up a date for a public hearing to get that properly on the ballot. Denise?
But the public hearing, just for clarification, the public hearing can't take place any earlier than 30 days before the election, not any sooner, or not,
You're right, yes.
2 weeks to 30
Yeah.
days. So it wouldn't do us any good to do it in the fall, but we'll put it on the docket to make sure that in January of next year, we make sure it gets on the ballot versus a warrant article. And I think what you're really saying is the biggest issue is the whole printing issue is really what's keeps us from doing it this year.
For this year, it makes it really difficult logistically to get it there. Because today I discovered that we needed 7 days notice for the public hearing, and it has to be a separate public hearing specifically for that warrant article.
Right.
It wouldn't be part of this budget hearing, it'd be part of the other one. There is another warrant article that will be on the town warrant. It's not a budget item, so it doesn't need to be discussed this evening, but I did forget to put it in the warrant article list. There's another petitioned article that's basically regarding the Citizens United case, and it's instructing the selectmen to request of our district legislative representatives to consider a referendum for the Constitution. And so that you'll see on the warrant. It's just not in the article, among these articles today. So there'll be another article, probably Article 30. Why haven't I seen that? Oh, it's on this page.
It'll be 32.
It'll be 32, and then Article 32 will become Article 33. So there'll be one more article on there. That was submitted by petition. Ray?
I'd like to compliment the Board of Selectmen and putting together a nice budget and very well presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Any other comments? At this point, I will close the public hearing on the 2013 budget. And I will open the regularly scheduled selectmen's meeting. First up on the agenda is to approve the minutes, regular minutes from January 17th, 2013.
Make a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
Any discussion, changes?
No.
Read them. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The non-public meeting minutes from January 24, 2013.
Make a motion to approve those minutes?
I actually don't have those minutes here for approval.
I won't make that motion.
They're in the building, but they don't. I didn't bring them here this evening, so next meeting I'll bring those.
Table that.
Table that for the next meeting.
Jerry, before you move on, did you want to vote on your
Oh,
articles?
we did want to vote. Oh, on the articles.
Recommending, non-recommending?
Oh, that's right.
Martha, thanks for bringing that up. Did we vote on the January 17th minutes?
Yes.
We
Yes.
did? Okay. We'll table the other ones. For voting to recommend or not recommend the warrant articles, we probably really should do that in our regular scheduled selectmen's meeting. I don't think we really need to do that for the public hearing.
Okay.
Why don't we get through the agenda, and then when we get to do it down under new business. Thanks, Martha, for reminding us there. That brings us to public comment, and I'm sure John will be back in the room momentarily, so maybe you could give us a minute.
hyper-focused. It was like this. Big, Your turn. Your turn.
What?
Public comments. Denise?
Lee Sachs. I just wanted to say that Diane Falsey, I wanted to talk a bit about Diane Falsey. You know, I'm 4 years full-time in this town, and 15 years or 17 years as a part-time resident. But in the full time that I've been here and working with Diane, she provided a good deal of knowledge and support to me, both as a private citizen and currently as a library trustee. You know, and I have the utmost respect for her expertise, her organization, and her willingness to help and educate whenever it was needed. She was always willing to lend a hand, always very knowledgeable. And I believe Diane's been a valuable asset to this town and the people who come into contact with her. She takes the time to work with people, make sure that many of us who come into elected positions are untrained in town government. And she ensures the town continues to run smoothly according to law and within the town budget. And people like Diane, all the people like Diane, are the backbone of our government structure as a whole. So I was really surprised and disappointed to hear of her termination. And the town and its citizens are going to suffer for that. And I urge you to consider reinstating her now, especially at this time of the annual budget, the election, and town meeting. I believe that allegations of insubordination is really a subjective cause of termination, and it's not objective. So please release the results of the investigation, which the town paid $12,000 to conduct. Please provide facts to back the serious action of terminating somebody who's competent and professional individual such as Diane. I really urge you to consider that.
Ellen?
I'm Helene Matesky, and I'm treasurer of trustees of the trust fund. My husband was treasurer prior to that, and he was not particularly a research-oriented person. When we became involved in the trust funds, we were handed 3 pages, 3 little teeny pieces of paper. There was no list even identifying which trust funds the town had. There was no documentation whatsoever identifying how the trust should have been used, what wills were used and initiated to substantiate the purposes of the trust. There was basically nothing. The prior staff, Tracy and Julie, were heavily involved in doing their job, but they didn't have the organizational skills that Diane Falsey had. Using Diane's expertise, we were able to start from scratch. Some of the funds went back to 1930, and to try and figure out why a fund was established in 1930 was almost impossible. Using Diane, we were able to locate wills, we were able to research RSAs, we were able to get her expertise on what is the purpose of a trust fund versus what goes into the general fund. We now have all the documentation we need. We have 3 or 4 binders, and we can manage and help you manage the town's money and the money that the town voters are putting in your hands and in our hands. I cannot speak highly enough about Diane's expertise and professionalism, and we are asked to believe that there's some kind of insubordination. I do believe that when you work in any business, not everybody gets along. If I ask people to raise their hand, how many times do they have to disagree with their boss? I think all of us would have our hands up. How many times do we think we have a better idea than our boss? If something happened and occurred in the office, in a working day environment, good managers manage those little blips. I don't believe that all of us are going to even fathom that there was any such thing as insubordination, especially given the environment of how she was dismissed. We have had no information on a research report that the town, that all of us paid for. And it's not my opinion that that information should be made public. The Attorney General's report, which is on the town website, says that a board member cannot suppress information if the meeting is about his own behavior. And your actions have cost the town a lot of money. First, you've cost us the loss of the best employee we've had in years. $12,000 is a rumor for the investigation. And now there's going to be additional lawsuits and additional legal fees. And I believe that what you've done is not consistent with who we are as a town. Are we the kind of people that drive someone out just because we disagree with them? I think we're all disappointed in your behavior.
Are there any more comments? Gino? Beth?
There was a good-sized group outside today. Protesting the removal of Diane. I know some of you came in later. I don't know how many people saw it. They were out there, my Daily Sun was out there taking pictures. These people share the same viewpoint that you heard from Denise and from Helene just now. You certainly heard from me in the past requesting this information to clarify exactly what's going on here in town. They stood here in the freezing cold today to protest this. There was an article in today's Sun where you, Jerry, responded that in a vague way about Diane's removal. We have all heard that she's been fired. I would like to, first of all, hear you confirm that for us tonight, what your plans are. I thought it was on the agenda until I came here tonight. Who is going to put together all this information for the town warrant that I understand is a sizable task, it takes some expertise? How much more is that going to cost us? And I hope that you are going to budget a lot of money for the lawsuit that is apparently coming, as was stated in today's Daily Sun.
Gino?
This isn't my jump on Jerry time, believe me, but as a selectman here, I helped hire her. I found her, and we looked through her background, to be an exemplary person and employee. We had 2 or 3 other people that applied for jobs at the same time, and the 3 selectmen, I think we would agree, we looked at them up and down and sideways for their potential for the future of our town. Diane Falsey appeared to be, to us, as a group, the best we could get. Now, my last year as a selectman, as a chair, was my only year with Diane. Every meeting, if you go back in that year, you'll find me in between 45 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes. Because I can say, having been in business before with a large company, that she had those meetings and those topics itemized to a fairly well. We never had 4-hour meetings or 5-hour meetings. They were an hour. There was no reason because she had everything done and put together. I think when you talked in the newspaper, whatever you did about Diane the other day, and Ms. Falsey, you basically said, I guess, that she wasn't fired, that she didn't quit, whatever it was, it was kind of limbo. What I would ask you to do as a group of selectmen, as men, think about what they've done. Think about it. All right, so there was a little bit of aggravation, back and forth, whatever, what have you. We're better than that. We can be bigger than that. Just get together as a group and say, you know what? Diane, we're sorry, you're sorry, let's go on. Several years ago, we had one of our employees quit. She turned in a resignation. There was a bunch of brouhaha about it. I talked to her
And she was crying, and I said, do you want me to ask the other selectmen to rescind your notice? She said, yes, please. B. Davis can testify to it. I called Brooke, she said, what are you, out of your mind? I called Dave Mason up. What are you, out of your mind? No, I wanted to save an employee. I'm saying to you now, Diane is a wonderful person and a great employee. We can avoid lawsuits. Everybody just pulling their horns, calm down, and bring her back. You know, you'll be better men for it, believe me, and better public representatives. Thank you, sorry.
I have another comment. I think if we take the emotion out of all of the things that have happened and feelings that have been hurt, and we look at it as business people and as Christians and people who have courtesy and dignity and treat other people with respect. If you look at the New Hampshire Local Government Center reports on risk management, for people who are not insurance people, I worked for Cigna for 10 years. Risk management means how can you save your entity, your corporation, your town, money? And how can you save money from lawsuits with employees? Go look at the report that the professionals on personnel have put together, attorneys who put this together. What they say is create an environment where all your employees succeed. This is not my opinion. Create an environment where complaints are welcomed and resolved in a public forum. If you have a bad employee, make sure you do everything you can to change any behavior that was bad and incorrect and inappropriate. I don't believe we had a bad employee. I think that we had an employee who was doing her job and who disagreed when she thought it was appropriate. Maybe there were some issues that were confusing that needed clarification. You deal with it. You say, okay, this is what Joe thinks, this is what Diane thinks, let's clarify. Maybe there were some personnel procedures that were outdated. That some policies that were in place that were no longer necessary, about whatever. Then you just say, okay, we have it in a public forum, the three of you vote and say, we're changing the policy. Diane, this is the new policy you should enforce. Create an environment where people feel they understand what they're expected to do, and everybody gets along. People don't always have to get along, but you have to work together. And the reason for this is not touchy-feely, not emotions and you hurt my feelings and you. This is to save the town money. This is good business practice. And it's good people management, and it's good for people to treat each other with dignity and respect. You know, good business practices, and make people feel good about going to work every day. And make you guys feel good about what you're doing. You're doing your volunteer work. All of us are working together. And what you've done is counterproductive to what we're all trying to accomplish.
Can I just say a few words? Very brief. I worked with Diane, and what she came into, you do not know. And she did a fantastic job and got everything really turned around and was impartial. She loved the town and worked for the town.
I'd like to add my voice to the rest of these people.
Go ahead, Susan.
No,
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But I feel the same way.
Sorry.
Put down ditto there.
Right.
I'd like to make one comment. Why don't we let the selectmen do their job and keep this semi-election situation
Greg,
out
this
of it?
isn't political. This is
Oh,
treating
of
people
course.
with dignity and it's
We
costing
know
us
it is.
money. It's costing us money as a town. Take the politics out of it. We're not all irrational people. You take the number of people who work with Diane, three of you against the rest of us. There's the planning board, the zoning board, the trustees of the trust fund, the library trustees. Do you think we're all irrational in making this up? Come on, guys, you are better than that. You are better men than that. This is the kind of town we want. We don't want this kind of behavior. We don't want people who have their own egos and opinions and take it out on town employees. Get your act together.
All I like to say is I'm disappointed with all three of you.
basically. Sure. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on. To the police report. Carl?
Okay.
Hello, Chief.
Glad everyone was
How you doing?
good.
Sorry for the wait. Let me get the door here.
You got a pile going?
Nope.
Good to go?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, we took a report of some overdue cross-country skiers, which in time they did show up. We handled 6 false burglar alarms at a business in town that had complained about a person who parked a car blocking their business. We were able to locate the owner and get the car moved. We're continuing to work with a landlord tenant that's they're having problems. It's still civil. It's not really into our realm, but if we can help out, we're trying to keep things down and de-escalated. We took a complaint from the State Highway Department for an abandoned motor vehicle at the second rest stop. We assisted the Jackson Cross Country Skiing. They had a skier that got injured and was being brought out. And we went up to the fire gate at the end of Carter Notch Road and opened that up for them to be able to get the person out. Assisted the ambulance with a ice skater that had an ankle injury. He answered a 911 call that was a misdial. A individual had found a canine running free on the backside of Dundee and took the dog and just held on to it, notified us, and we were able to get the dog back to the owner. Another loose canine complaint up by the gas station. We had a gentleman and his wife that were out of town. He had put a request in to keep an eye on his house. We assisted a citizen in town who had taken an individual, a younger person who was having some problems in life and was having some problems with the Division of Youth and Family Services, and they came out and eventually they took possession of the child, and it was knowing both parties, we were able to be there and just kind of mediate, yeah, just let the residents know that they weren't being taken advantage of. And again, they had taken a younger person in as a favor, and so assisted the fire company with a house that had burnt on Ridge Road. Assisted the ambulance with a gentleman on Green Hill Road that was suffering from just a severe, really bad toothache, which permeated into a very bad headache. A motor vehicle accident on Carter Notch Road and Valley Cross Road. We had a court date, if you recall. We had a case back in October of a lady that was down at the grammar school, and she was found guilty of both charges. And the next day, her driver's license was suspended. The next day, we saw her drive through town, and she had driven to the post office parking lot, jumped in the passenger seat, and just denied driving. In the meantime, she called her father, who came down and scooped her up. Sean was out with them, and I arrived as they just come around the parking lot at the post office and positioned my cruiser so that it was they couldn't get out. This developed, they were very uncooperative, would only put the window down this much and then put it back up when they weren't yelling. wouldn't get out. So we requested a state or a deputy, both came up. The subject's father at one point got out of the vehicle, would not listen, and he was arrested for interfering and hindering. And the young lady was arrested for driving on a suspended license and not complying. So, and that whole phone call standoff lasted about 35 minutes. Basically, there was just another lost dog, and somebody had purchased a house, found some old ammunition in it and turned it in. So.
Thank you, Chief.
How you feeling after you already got hurt in the fire?
Well, yeah, the one of the fire trucks for Bartlett, if they finished putting his load of water on, went to move out quickly so another truck could come in, forgot to detach a hose. And as it pulled away, the hose caught like under a tire, and it just expanded like a rubber band. And when it let go, it just took me out, and it took a lady, a neighbor who was watching the fire out. And you know, as my time goes, I landed on the coupling. I went down, and it's one of these things that happens so quick next, you know. And you know, I just got a really good bruise, a little sore and stuff. But you know, it was an eye opener. It told me that in a split second, things can change. You know, you can't
Very
take.
dangerous situation there. That was
Yeah.
been a lot more happening there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy night, Carl. Move on to building matters. We have a building permit for installing solar panels. Entertain a motion to approve the building permit for Donna Yori to install solar panels. I don't have, that's map V9 lot 17.
So moved.
Second.
Andy did not get a chance to submit written recommendation for this. However, he did call in. It is?
Yes.
Thanks, Al. Oh, there it is. I would recommend granting this application. There we go. He did call in with that today as well, so. Anybody want to see this? Questions?
I saw it on the thing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you skip 6 just because Jay kind of gave his report during the public hearing? Or?
Yeah, Jay had nothing to bring for our regular meeting tonight. Still the 7th, right?
Yeah, we're still.
And we're still in 2013.
We are, I don't know you.
Next up is height restriction discussion for Richardson Sears building permit. This is one, Andy's looking for some feedback from us. This is one where you know, previous boards would consider this not to have passed, and I think he's looking for some feedback on us to weigh in on that. It's looks to be what was planned to be in violation of the height ordinance, and Andy's just wondering how the current board would rule on that. I've taken a look at it, it seems to me as though that would, in fact, violate the height ordinance. Have you guys looked at it at all?
No,
No, I haven't.
it's 35 feet, right? It's the height ordinance. How high is this gonna be?
It's above the natural grade, or if the grade is lowered, then it would be to what the grade is lowered to. So I think this is the case where the natural grade was lowered, so the height restriction would be measured to the new low point in the ground. That's the way I see that anyway.
39. And so this came to us without an application?
This is already an existing application. I think he's just,
Oh.
he's looking for feedback from us. I don't think we need to do a motion or anything. He's ordinarily, with previous boards, he would just indicate that this is, a violation of the zoning ordinance. I think he's just looking for us to give him feedback on that. So, unless we feel differently, I think we would just go ahead and say, yeah, Andy, we're in agreement that that's height relation, the height violation of the height restriction needs to be brought into compliance with that, right, from the design standpoint.
It's already a pretty low pitch.
You could get a variance from the ZBA though, right?
I don't believe they're asking for us to consider something different. I think this is just, they're in the design process. It looks like what they had designed is in violation of that. So, Elle, is that your understanding of that as well? That,
yeah.
If they want to move forward with something that's in violation, then they could ask us to consider it, and then we could deny it and go that process. But that's not where they're at this point. I think they're just looking for reassurance that yes, that's how we would view that.
That's how I would view it.
So Ella, we can go ahead and inform Andy that we agree with his analysis of that.
Correct.
John, can you just write a quick note on that?
Me?
For to remind me that you call me tomorrow.
Okay, call in.
Scrap metal agreement for the Bartlett Jackson Transfer Station. I don't know if I'm looking at that item on the agenda properly or not. Ella, there's two different things under item number 8. One's a scrap metal agreement, and it looks as though one's a letter of agreement for the 2013 groundwater monitoring on Balloon Road. Okay.
Yeah, I think
They're
that's
both in the folder.
Thanks.
unrelated.
The scrap metal agreement, enclosed, please find a copy of the scrap metal agreement for your signature. Please let us know if you have any objections to renewing this contract. Please sign and return in the enclosed self-addressed stamped envelope. And we'll forward that to Roger Labby for signing. If you wish to make changes, let us know. This is the same scrap metal agreement that we've been using with them for a couple years. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the agreement.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, that's for Roger Labby's date. Yep. Next up is the letter of agreement for the 2013 groundwater monitoring Balloon Road. This is already the agreement that we approved and signed twice now. I guess they're looking for us to sign the final version. So I'd entertain a motion to sign the letter of agreement with H.E. Bergeron and further to allow me to sign as the chair, as the authorized representative.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. They never give you room to write down name and title. At least not when you have a long name. I think I got them all in the right places, Al. If I missed something, just let me know. Thanks. Intent to cuts. Entertain a motion to authorize an intent to cut for Garland Lumber Company, R19, Lot 477, Unit 9. That's number 12-23111.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Entertain a motion to approve the intent to cut for Adams Street Trust, map R8, lot 46, number 12231-13.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Jerry, that's on the new DRA forms, there's only one page now, we just have to photocopy or email it once it's done.
More copy paper?
No more.
Wow.
So it's down there as the assessing officials, because we are actually the town assessors as well. I entertain a motion to approve the intent to cut for Dickerson Realty Trust, map R8, lots 60, 61, and 62. It's number 12-231-14.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up, we have a liquor outside license area for the Wentworth license to consider for, oh, thanks. Freudian slip, maybe. Back to item number 10, public comment again. Does anybody have anything at this point for public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. That brings us back to the liquor license for the Wentworth outside the license area to approve for from May 1st through November 30th of 2013. Entertain a motion to approve the liquor license.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to the job search for the office administrator. We need to craft an advertisement to post for the position and then start to advertise it. A couple different ways we can go about this. One, we can obviously execute it ourselves. And we do have also the option of using an outside professional service to execute that for that. And something we haven't had a opportunity to discuss yet, so this is kind of our first opportunity to do so, and just looking for some feedback on how we want to proceed with this.
What do you know about the outside agency?
Well, I haven't even specified one yet, so it's
Oh.
just that, you know, the idea of using that instead of...
That is done for
It
for
is,
this type
yeah.
of position.
There are services that do that. And it might be worth looking into it to see if it's, you know, what they do is they post the ad, they could utilize our job description, and they receive the applications, they review them, and typically what they do is they narrow the field of candidates down to who they would recommend, and send those resumes to us, and then we would review and schedule any interviews to do. Is typically how that type of service works. There are some, you know, in the state, you know, I heard that there's a good one in Littleton to use. I believe MRI, a service that we've used in the past, does that type of thing, and it's just something to consider. And
What have we used the MRI service for in the past?
I don't know any specifics at the moment.
Okay.
I was hoping to look into it a little bit this week, and I haven't had the opportunity to yet. So.
With your free time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't we start the advertisement process and then if, you know, at least get the ball rolling and then...
Right.
Absolutely. That really doesn't, you know, wouldn't affect that one way or the other. It's just, that is, you know, that is usually typically part of the service that they provide. So, and it's just a thought. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I mean,
right.
By no means do we need to go about that way. I mean, it's just, it's, you know, I'm not sure which one of us is really going to be able to spearhead this and take it on as, you know, diligently as it's probably required. So I don't know whether you want me to, maybe we should just, you know, craft the ad and start to advertise. I'll probably have some time next week that I could research it a little bit more to see what our options for using a professional service to sift through the resumes might be and to find out how much that type of service costs. You know, I know if you do that in the private sector, typically that service is paid for by the applicants actually, when they're hired for the position, is how that service is done. I don't know exactly how it might work for a municipal resource, but it's worth looking into anyway. And I don't mind doing that if you think we should perhaps pursue that.
I have no problem with you looking into it. And I think in the meantime we should go ahead and post for the position.
Post for the position.
Local media.
I agree.
Jerry, did you say that in the private business, the applicant pays for the job search service?
Sometimes that happens, yes.
Yeah, well, my experience is it's almost always, maybe at professional levels, it's almost always paid for by the company.
Not the applicant that's just applying to the position, but that fee is sometimes paid for by the person that's actually hired for the position at some point. It's just the way it's done in some instances. It's done in other ways as well. It's, but
Honestly, I've never seen that, but I've seen many situations where the company pays for the service.
Okay.
And it can run as much as 50% of the first year's salary.
I'm sure there's services that do that. There's services that are more local that actually don't charge that type of money, but at any rate, I think it's worth looking into and see if it's something we want to look at. And meanwhile, in posting and crafting the ad, what do we want the ad to look like, and where do we want to post it?
I think I had the copy of the last one that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I do have that, I just didn't bring it tonight, I don't think.
We've got it in the office here too.
I just brought that. I need it. I didn't.
Might be able to. If you could, please. Do you know where it's at in there?
job description now, so we have a clear understanding of what the essential duties will be. Not that you would need those for the posting, for the ad, but you know, there may be some of those duties that we would want to feature.
In the ad, do we want to be just asking for people to send in their resumes? Or do we want them contacting by phone? Do we not want that happening at this point? I mean,
I think letter of interest, and resume, and I think there should be a deadline. We might want to at least discuss that.
I could make a comment.
Yeah.
I would make a suggestion that when you advertise this, you advertise it as selectman's assistant. Get rid of that administrative thing. That's just a suggestion.
Yeah. We talked about that title and bandied about a number of different terms. Maybe it's office administrator / selectman's assistant. The essential duties that we used to create the job description.
Sometimes
talk about that. Right,
sometimes
right. We'll say, sure, right.
Question of who's working for who.
It's a good suggestion, and
I think it is a good suggestion. I think that that's one thing that we should probably change in the ad, is that the last time the ad was posted, it was for office administrator. When we were going through the job description process, you know, when we went to the LGC, office administrator isn't really something that exists in municipal government necessarily. The two positions that really make more sense are town administrator and or the administrative assistant. That's really what the position is. It's one or two of the others. Those two positions are virtually one and the same. It's basically just, you know, the title on it is what's different. So I think we should really advertise the position as administrative assistant or town administrator, or both. I mean, would make the most sense to do. Mostly from the standpoint too of people that are looking for the job. I mean, if they're looking for a job and they see office administrator, and that's not really known what that is, you know, from a standard standpoint, it might be smarter to do that. Thanks, all.
Take one.
Thanks, Martha.
This is 2009. That was office administrator.
when you have this posted in the paper, would be nice to have it run. We want to have that run for at least a week, right?
Yeah, I would say that you'd want it to run for at least a week. And do we want responses within 2 weeks? Do we want responses within 3 weeks? We're letting it run for a week.
Well, if we ran it for a week, we started it next week, that would be Tuesday the 12th. That would run until Saturday the 16th. And you could put a deadline on it for the following week, no later than the 22nd, I wouldn't think. What do you think, John?
That's fine, that seems reasonable.
Probably no earlier than the 18th, no later than the 22nd. Letter of interest and resumes must be received. So there'll be a little bit of wording differences here. Send letter of interest and resume.
So changes to this one, I mean, I think that, should we advertise it as office administrator? I mean, administrative assistant?
Yeah.
John, that sound good to you?
Yep.
You want to consider assistant to the selectman in there, or is that going to be part of the essential duties so that it's clear?
That's going to be part of the essential duties. I mean, administrative assistant is an assistant to the selectman. That's what the position entails. The other change I would make in here is, candidate must have experience on MS Word and Excel. I think I would add QuickBooks to that as well.
Okay.
Just a grammatical error. It's not personnel days, it's personal days. That should be changed.
I would, I'm not sure how I feel about excellent customer skills. I think probably communication skills would better serve there than customer skills.
Absolutely.
Send letter of interest and resume.
So, who wants to write this up? You?
I'll write
me,
it up.
John, you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, see if you can get a draft out by the weekend to us.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then
and then through the office, we'll approve the draft and get it out by Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sound good, John?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay.
For ads to be placed Tuesday, we have to have them in no later than noon time.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Noontime on Monday? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. We got time to go through
The warrant article?
the warrant articles?
Seems pretty straightforward. Is there anything under old business?
Thanks, Ray.
Damn.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Fellas hang right in there,
years of service. I
You're doing a
got
good
your
job.
letter. Thank you.
as far as I'm concerned.
See you, Brooke.
Hey, Rick.
You driving? Or they just leaving at the same time?
Probably in the same
Brookie
time.
Dodge, Junior.
So, John, you got good time to go through the warrant articles?
Sure.
11C, yeah.
Warrant article, selectmen recommendations. Aside from that, I don't think there's really, we won't be doing anything else on tonight's agenda, so the recommendations will be the last item. So.
When are we gonna get to unsealing the rules? We gotta get doing that sometime.
Have you reviewed them
I
yet?
have not.
I have not either.
No.
I mean,
I've done two,
Done two. How many are there?
and I'll show you where that is, because I might be here this weekend. I'll show you where it's kept, and then we'll all know how to access it.
Yeah,
I pulled it out, I got
I'd
here
really like to
early.
push that through.
Yeah, I did a couple. Yeah.
and I don't think there's really anything in there that warrants us not unsealing. So I mean, I think we don't
Up
need
to this point there.
we don't need to scrutinize it heavily.
Right,
We just go through it quickly
Skim.
and skim it and see.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the possibility of scheduling a meeting for next week if there's any important reasons to. Is next Thursday doable for you guys?
I don't think we have a planning board next one, right? Because I think we got everything done.
Is there one on that?
There is one that's usually put up there just because, but it is not up there now. So looks like I'm free.
But
I'll be available.
because
It's Valentine's Day.
Is it?
Yeah.
That is.
Oh.
Just saying.
Just unknown.
I'm just,
Well, John, that might not work for you. I'm serious.
Yeah, but
Well-
the way you said that.
Maybe it doesn't need to be Thursday of next week.
I'm fine with Thursday, it's not, it shouldn't take that long,
It shouldn't
right?
be a long meeting,
No.
but the two pending business things that we really aren't going to get to tonight is those minutes and the Shaw and Chase water drainage matter.
Okay.
That's one that I've been dropping the ball on for way too long now.
Mhm.
It's, the only thing that's impeding anything at this point is me, so.
If we do it early enough, I'm sure I can get a reprieve.
Well, let's consider at this point, if we're going to do it, I'll get
If
it
we
scheduled by
meet-
Tuesday.
From 4:30 and to 5:30. I mean, we shouldn't need more than an hour.
I would think
So
not.
if we put a commitment on an end time, which we've done before, I think that'll
I'll
work.
bring a roll of duct tape, I mean.
All right.
All right, so let's schedule then one for
All right.
for Thursday next week.
Sounds good, 4:30.
4:30.
And get Lewis off the plate and Shaw.
Okay.
Lingering around, and I'll get there this weekend to read those, and you show me where they are, Bob.
Yeah, I'll show you both before we leave tonight.
Back to the warrant articles, we can probably go through these pretty quickly.
We need to do it one at a time?
You can vote on them as a
We can-
group unless there's something that someone's not going to support.
And
I'm not seeing anything I'm not going to support.
the only thing I saw in here, John, last year on the Eastern Slope Airport one,
We voted against that one like last year.
yeah, I mean, do we want to, because we can also vote on all but one if we want to.
Yeah.
Who's going to be against the airport?
Well, I was last year,
Oh,
and still
okay.
probably am, I guess, technically. I mean, I don't see a lot of benefit out of that.
All right, well, what
It's
number
Article
is that?
28.
28?
Yeah, so why don't we entertain a motion to recommend Articles 5
Through 27.
through 27. And, I'm sorry?
How about up to 32?
Excluding 28.
28 is the one that we,
Yeah, but do up through 32, exclude, or 33, excluding 28.
Say
and then
Articles
vote
1
on
through
28
27,
separately.
29 through 33, because there'll be a third 30. Yeah, I don't even know what that new Article 32 is going to say. I was totally unclear on that, Citizens United.
I haven't figured out the wording for that yet either. It shouldn't be too difficult to get the wording for it down. It's not an article that has a lot of meaning because it's one, I don't think it's one the legislative body has the authority to actually direct the selectmen to do. But that's kind of beside the point. I think it's more.
Are we going to favor it? Are we going to go on record as favoring it?
Well, that's what I wanted to get to about that one, because non-spending articles, we do not recommend
Okay.
one way or the other. So you're not supposed to recommend non-spending articles, so.
So we could still say Articles 1 through 27 and 29 through 31.
Yes,
Okay.
that motion was made.
Article 5 or Article?
Articles 5.
5,
Thank you.
And,
29 through
31.
31.
and this is a draft, so Article 5 might change a bit and it might not be there anymore. Depends how they get back to us, but the spirit of it, it'll be a separate warrant article, it's just a matter of what it'll say and where it'll be, so that still covers us as far as that one's concerned, so. Any more discussion on those? That was a motion.
I second.
In a second.
Motion, I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's 3 to 0 to 0 tally on all of those. Article 28, I'd entertain a motion to recommend Article 28.
So moved.
It would be, I'll second it.
Okay.
You can second it without actually voting for it, but I'll second that one.
Thank you.
Any discussion there?
Anything you want to share, John, about why you don't see yourself
I
supporting that?
don't really see what $500 is really gonna, it's, you know, it's nothing. I mean, you know, why are we spending that money at all? I mean, it's not what I get any use out of it. I haven't seen any, I don't know, maybe we are.
Well, it's funny how that does seem to come up
I know.
a lot of years. And I think that it provides us access to emergency medical airlifts and things like that, if I remember correctly from hearing discussion in past meetings.
I listed that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say Dr. Geiger
Yeah.
stood up and actually spoke of a situation where they used the airport to evacuate somebody because of the bad weather and could not use.
What would the $500 have to do for that? I mean, it wouldn't,
Well, I mean-
certainly wouldn't pay for that airlift.
No, well, I think I would answer that question as much the same as many of these others. You know, what is $1,000 gonna do? You know, what is $2,500 gonna do for early support services program, their law, or the fuel systems? The need is much greater. You know, or the 716 for Northern Human Services. I think many of these are just token amounts.
Right, I just don't see, you know, I mean, it should be $5,000 if it's gonna be anything, I would think, you know, I just, such a small amount of money in it, you know.
Yeah, but I guess the point I'm making is you can make that argument about many of these articles at the end.
I think it's all they're asking for.
That's correct, that's all they are asking for. And to Frank's point, it's exactly right. We could say that whatever we're contributing to any of these petitioned articles is a mere pittance to their whole budget. The Freiburg Airport is in excess $10 million asset that runs on about $50,000 a year. A good bit of their expenses is snow plowing. Whatever expense they have that isn't offset by other towns contributing has to, by law, be paid for by the town of Freiburg. The FAA feels that it's sufficiently important to keep that facility there from a number of reasons for safety, just for having airports, you know, hopscotched around in areas for aircraft to land. It's also a refueling station for aircraft. Without that airport, it would be a significant economic impact to Mount Washington Valley. And the towns that contribute indicate to the board of directors of Eastern Slope Airport, which is what that was called, feel that that gives them the support and the not psychological support, but the towns are with them in their endeavor.
It's a good faith endorsement. It's a good faith endorsement.
Yeah.
I mean, is really what it comes down to there, I think. But it is an article that for some reason every year warrants a lot of discussion and a lot of dissenting views. And I think it's healthy, if nothing else, to go through some of that right now and kind of.
I think it's because people, my concept of why it's opposed by certain individuals is that they think that it's a rich man's endeavor. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have an aircraft there, but I am a pilot. I recognize the importance of small airports to the nation. I know that on several occasions, military aircraft have landed there in an emergency. It's also a place that helicopters can use as a place to, there's navigational aids that they provide for helicopters coming in for rescue in the area. They use that navigational aid to locate things. It has an automatic weather reporting station that's supported by the FAA that gives aircraft in the area safety information for operation.
And I think, to be fair, a little bit to any dissenting position, I think that sometimes people ask, well, what does Jackson have to do with most of that? The other thing, like last year, John, I remember that your opposition to it kind of centered around the fact that there wasn't anybody that signed the petition, that organized the petition here to speak about it. Right. And it was one of our things was like, this is one that, people have been taking for granted year after year. It used to be that, you used to be a petitioner of this. And
I was formerly on the board of directors.
And one of the points about all that was that, it is a good faith gesture from the town, but at the same time, when no one that's organizing the petition and stands behind the petition is actually here to speak to it, how do we know what to even say about it positively? And it's nice to hear your endorsement of it and Frank's endorsement and Dr. Badger's last year, and that's enough for me to support it, but at the same time, I think one of John's only point, I don't mean to be before you, but just to be fair to that, I think that was one of the points that he was also making. I don't think we need to beat this bush much more, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That one was 3-0 to 0-2. And the other warrant article that will go on here is not one that we'll recommend, so we'll just, I'll get the wording for that out there.
Not one we have to recommend or have to make a decision on.
We don't recommend that one way or the other. That's just one that goes, it's a non-spending article, so non-spending articles we don't do that to. I would say to that petition, to that article, I think that I like what it stands for. I mean, basically it's asking to make a constitutional change to the U.S. Constitution so that Citizens United is, you know, the Supreme Court ruling on Citizens United would change so that it wouldn't be constitutional for a corporation to be considered a natural person, meaning corporations would no longer have unlimited ability to make campaign donations. Is what that one's about.
If love doesn't fit, you must acquit.
All right. I think that wraps up our business for the evening, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks,
coming.
guys.